So let's add some CSS to this page. And as I mentioned, there are 3 different ways of adding CSS. The first way you can use is inline styling. Now let's say we want to style this section here. We can add an inline style by adding the style attribute to the section tag. The style attribute is a normal HTML attribute which you can actually add to pretty much any HTML element. Now you can simply set a CSS style by now applying a so-called CSS declaration inside of that style attribute, or inside of that string you pass as an argument, I could say. A declaration simply means that you define what you want to style and how you want to style it. Now the what is called a property. And here we could say we want to set the background of this section. Now how do I know that there is a background property? As you will learn throughout the course, there first of all is a list of some properties you commonly use, so you will really see that you reuse the same set of properties all the time. And I will also show you a complete reference of all available properties so that you can really search for that single property you need for your case. But back to the background. As you might be able to guess, the background property styles the background of this section. And we could set it to a value. Now this is the part where we say how it should be styled. We assign such a value by adding a colon after the property and then the value to which we want to set the background. Now which value you use here depends on the property. So for backgrounds, for example, we can assign a color. There also are other options like images, which I'll also show later, but for now let's use a color. And you can either assign a color like red, just by typing this. There is a set of predefined colors, so to say, but behind each such predefined color, there really is just a hex code you can use. And if you directly assign a hex code, you can actually mix or blend any color you want. A hex code is assigned by adding a hashtag and then the hex code value for a given color. I will show you how to find out the hex code value later. So for now, let's simply add one, and I prepared one which has the hex code FF1B68. This is a nice reddish color. Now if we save this file and we go back to the page and reload it, you should see that this section now has a red background. And that already is your first CSS code. This is how you can change the style of an element, in this case of the section. Now this was achieved by creating a so-called inline style. Inline because we use the style attribute directly on the element where you want to add it. And you would write all styles, if you have multiple ones, you can separate them with semicolons, in the same line. Now, this approach is actually not recommended, because if you create a bigger page with many styles, it quickly becomes very hard to understand and read your code. Because your style is always applied to the element you want to change. If you ever want to change a style, you have to find that element in your document flow, and this is really hard to debug. Additionally, if you add multiple rules, let's say you have like 10 different properties you want to change, you get a very long list of properties you assign here, and that also is hard to read. So there is a better way of writing CSS, and that way actually uses so-called selectors. Let's dive into that approach and then the 2 remaining alternatives of including CSS code in the next video.